So how did it first develop the China's relationship with Africa? Well, China was founded in 1949, and by the time that China became an independent state, a lot of African countries were still fighting for their independence from the colonial powers. So I think from the very, very early stage, the Chinese have identified a common cause with African states or with African peoples that both China and the African peoples, they were fighting against colonial power, imperialist power, and capitalist power from the Chinese perspective. So I think from the very early days of the what we call the revolutionary years, the first generation of the Chinese leaders had identified this common cause with Africa. And of course, China was willing to provide a massive amount of foreign aid despite its own domestic economic difficulties in the 1950s and in the 1960s and 70s in order to support what they call the independence movements of people in Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America. So there is a bit of a component of ideological struggle here, because at the peak days of the Cold War, China was basically acting hostilely. China was perceiving both U.S. and Soviet Union as hostile powers. Then China saw itself as a leader of the third world, or the third world countries that naturally formed an alignment with least developed or less developed countries in Africa, what the Chinese termed as third world countries. So this relationship has had a very long history, and especially in 1971, when China was trying to regain its seat as a United Nations to dispel the Republic of China, which is Taiwan, from the UN. I think more than 2/3 of the votes that supported the Chinese proposition came from African countries. So you could say that this brotherhood, or this fraternity, at least from the Chinese perspective with Africa, has a long history.